Hi, welcome to Di's Home and Garden. I'm Di, and today, even though I'm standing in the kitchen, we're not cooking, which is what we normally do. We cook, we're out in the garden, or we're doing crafts. So today we're actually doing some sewing. So what I'm going to do today is to make a pair of shorts for my grandson. My grandson is 3 going on 4, but he is a very small size. So I'm making from a pattern which is a size 2. So let me just show you what pattern I'm going to be using. So these are the patterns that I like to use. These are from the Knitwit range. Now I'll open this up and show you why I like them. This pattern, I'm just going to read from the front, so excuse me for not looking at the camera there. The pattern is size 1 to 6, and in this one pattern, which I will say I bought about 35 years ago, I have a children's knit top, slacks, shorts and panties, and from this I can make like a top, I can make a track pants, I can make pajamas, I can make a t-shirt, shorts, I can make all different sorts of things. Now this pattern is for knitted fabrics, so something with a stretch in it. But I found that if I just make it a little bit larger, it will work for woven fabrics as well. So you just need to watch what fabric you're using and whether you need to enlarge the pattern just very, very slightly. Okay, so I'm going to be opening up the pattern just to show you. So you can see that this is on nice firm paper. It's got all your pattern pieces in there with all different lines on it for different sizes. Lots of instructions on it. And what I do, I trace the size that I want, and I use something called violin, and I trace my pattern pieces onto that and cut them out. Now, because it's on violin, you can also use tracing paper. Because it's on violin, what I do it on violin, it will last me for years and years. So I've got patterns here that I've been using since my niece and nephew were born, and they're in their 40s. So I've used them over and over. So I've used them for my nieces and nephews, I've used them for my children, and now I'm using the same patterns for my grandchildren. So if you do put it onto violin, even if you put it onto tracing paper, if you treat them carefully and use a good quality tracing paper, the pattern pieces will last you for years and years and years. So I've certainly got my money's worth out of this $6.50 pattern, and it's very, very easy to adjust these patterns if you want a little bit more room in the leg, a little bit more tapered, very easy. So let's get started. I'll just get my fabric and I'll be cutting this out. So I'll lay the pattern on the fabric and I'll show you what I'm doing there. Now, this is the fabric that I'm going to be using, and it's a pattern which is a One Direction pattern. So you might get a pattern which doesn't matter which way it goes, whether it's up or down, it doesn't matter, but this one does. This one has got trucks and buses and caravans, everything, diggers, and it's only in one direction. Now we need to have 2 pieces of each pattern piece here. So I'm going to fold the fabric over. Now what you need to be careful of, you might have your fabric, now if you fold it the wrong way, if I folded it that way and put my pattern piece on and cut it out, what would end up happening is that I would end up with one pattern piece the right way and the other one, the fabric would be upside down. So take care before you rush in and start cutting. Really have a look at the fabric you're using and how you're going to need to work with that fabric. So folding it back again that way, I'm just going to have a look at how big do I need it. Okay. I'm looking at what's underneath here because it's been cut away there. Can I get this piece out of there? No, I can't. I'm not going to. So I'm going to have to put it down here. And it's got a selvage edge on it, and we need to cut that off. So I need to make sure the pattern piece is inside there. So we're just positioning that. And then pinning it down. And what I need to make sure is that what it's lying on is nice and flat, and that there are no kinks or folds or anything where they shouldn't be in the fabric. The next, that was the front of the shorts. This is the back of the shorts. So again, making sure that there's enough room there to cut that selvage edge off, and there is. So again, pin the pattern piece down. Now, if you were making this with stretch fabric, I haven't done it, but I didn't trace all the details off my pattern, probably because I've been sewing for, I hate to say it, but getting close to 50 years, 45 years. So I know that if I was doing stretch fabric, I'd want the fabric to be stretching this way. So I would normally have a line on there with an arrow saying stretch this way, because you want the stretch to go around the body, not up and down. So you just have to be aware of that. Now, there are other areas, other ways you can get patterns. Sometimes if I have a pair of pants or just something that I really like the fit of, I really like the cut of it, if it wears out, I'll take that garment apart and I'll actually use the pieces of the garment as my pattern. So I will lay it on the violin, and you can see I use a large roll of violin. I use the whole roll. So I'll lay that out. I'll put my garment that I've taken apart, put it on top of the violin, cut a pattern out of it, and then I'll have a pattern that I can use. Okay, there I've got the shorts cut out. The first thing I'm going to do is to take the pins out. And take the pattern off it, making sure that I don't mix them up. At this stage, it's very easy to see which is the front and which is the back, so I don't need to mark them in any way. But what I need to do once I've got the pattern pieces off is to put them right sides together. So I'm just laying that over the top, and then I'll take that one away and put that one underneath. So there we go. I've got a front and a back, and they are right sides together. So I'm just going to pin that together, and I'll do the same with the other one. I'll put a pin through that and hold those two together. Right. I'll just go and get my pin cushion. So the first sewing that I'm going to do is to sew both sides. So the sides of the shorts, and then we'll do some overlocking after that. So I'll just put both of these together, line them up, and then I'll sew them. Now I'm using a 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. So just on the side of my, you can't see it, just on the side of my machine here, there are little numbers which tell you how wide your seam is. You can actually get something magnetic which you can put there, or what some people do is to put a bit of coloured tape, like electrical tape, down there so that it's a good guide for them. So if you're just new to sewing, that's something that you can do if you want to keep your seams straight. So let's just start sewing this. Now this does have an overlocking stitch at the beginning, but I just prefer to go backwards and forwards. That's just something I prefer to do to make sure that it's locked in. Just get my clippers. So we'll just trim those, and I'll trim those starting threads there. Got a container there for all my rubbish. So that's the first one done, and we'll do the second one and then come back. Okay, so I have got both pattern pieces here with front and back sewn, and I have overlocked them, and I have overlocked the top and the bottom edges as well as the seam. Now if you don't have an overlocker, you don't need to worry. You can just use a zigzag stitch on your normal sewing machine, and that will work just as well as an overlocker, but I like the overlocker because it trims. So once we've done all that overlocking, what we're going to be doing is to do this little short edge here, which is the inside leg seam. So this is the outside leg seam, the long one, and we're just going to sew the inside leg seam, and we're going to use the overlocker on that seam as well. So we'll come back when we've done that. Right, so what we'd normally do, what we've done here is to sew the outside leg seam. That was the first seam when it was a long seam. There's two short edges here, which is the inside leg seam. Now, what I find, normally we'd sew that and then we'd come back later and do the hem. But when I'm working on small items for children, I find it very fiddly to be trying to do a hem once I've already sewn up all the leg. So that's where I'm going to sew the hem. Now I'm going to sew the hem, but you might think, if you're a sewer and you're watching this video, you might think, oh, you don't do it that way. Well, it's just what I prefer to do, because otherwise it gets very fiddly to do the hem. So because I've put an edge on that already, I don't have to tuck it under, and I'm just going to fold that under for a little hem, and I'm going to hem all the way along here. So we'll just start off again, tying our stitch in, and once I've done that hem, I'll come back. Okay, I've done both edges now. You can see that I've done a hem along that bottom edge, and now we're going to sew up the inside leg seam. So just putting those two edges together, and I'm going to put a seam on there now. And once I've done that on both legs, I'll overlock those seams as well. Okay, we've done both inside leg seams and we have overlocked them. Now what we need to do is to keep one inside out, and we're going to turn the other one the right way around so we can see the pattern. Right, now we need to take the inside leg seam, put this piece inside our other piece, and we're going to match up the inside leg seams. We're going to put them together. Once they're together, we'll just even it up, and then we'll sew all the way around from front to back, the last seam that we have available. And once we get down to the bottom where the inside leg seam is, now, especially remembering that these are for kids, that's going to get a lot of wear and tear there. You know, when they're climbing up slippery dips and jumping and all the sorts of things that they do. So I like to go over that a couple of times, just to go backwards and forwards to really reinforce that area down there. Okay, so we're just going to sew this all together, and then we're going to overlock that seam as well. Okay, we're just finishing that seam, and now I'm going to overlock it. Okay, so I finished sewing that, and my overlocker has been giving me a lot of trouble. So as I said, you don't need an overlocker. You can zigzag it. So I don't know if you can see it there, but I've zigzagged all the way along there. Now, what we need to do next is a casing for the elastic. So I'll just go and get the elastic and be back. Okay, so we can put the elastic in two different ways. The first way we can do is to take our elastic and measure how wide that is, and then we can just we can work out how wide our channel needs to be to thread the elastic through, and then we can fold it over and we can sew that channel in place, leaving a small bit open so that then we can thread our elastic through. But the way I like to do it, to get a nice even gather around the waist, is I take my elastic and I mark out each quarter point. So just folding that, I've already marked it out. You can see I've got pins there. And I line these pins up with each quarter of the pants. And we've already got that marked because that's the seams. So it's your side seams and your front and back seam. They mark the quarters. Now what we need to do is to find the front and back. And you'll find that if you put the top seam together, the two seams, and then just pull it down, the back part of the pants is longer than the front. So you'll see that that crotch area is, you'll be able to see the front and the back. So this is the back here. I've got my finger on, so I'm just going to mark that with a pin. Right, and then I'm going to start with my elastic. And I'm just going to place my elastic, just leaving a little bit of distance, probably only a few millimeters from that top edge. And I'm going to go right around and put the pin in at each quarter. I'm going to attach it. And I'll just leave that last one loose. I only need the beginning part to be attached there. Now, the other thing that I do is, oh, I've lost it. The other thing I do, I get a little bit of tape. This is sewing tape, just a bit of cloth. And I'll just make a little loop out of that. And I don't have sew-in labels, so this is my little label to mark the back, so when someone's putting their shorts on, they know which is the back. So I'll show you as I add that, but that'll be not straight away. First of all, I'm going to start sewing the elastic on. Just trying to bring you a little bit closer there so you can see what I'm doing. Right, so I am going to remove this piece of my sewing machine so that I can put that around more easily. Right, so the stitch that I'm going to choose for this, I'll just show you. So the stitch that I'm going to be using for this, if you can see there, it's number 8. It's a zigzag, it's a 3-stitch zigzag. So rather than just attaching at one point and then down at the next and then that's your zigzag, it stitches along. So it does 3 stitches and then 3 stitches the other way. When you're sewing something which is going to be stretching, you want it to be sewn on well and you want it to have a bit of give. So that's why I'm using that stitch. So just lower my foot, take my pin out. Putting it on the stitch that I want. Now, as I do this, the elastic is obviously shorter than the pants. So I need to be stretching it as I'm doing it, and it gets sewn on stretched. Just put my needle in the down position so that it doesn't move when I'm readjusting things. And just as I do this, I'm just overlapping it, because we're getting back to the beginning now. I'm just overlapping it there on the elastic I've already sewn on. Okay, needle up. Just trim my threads. Okay, now the next step is just to go around that again. Now this is where I'm going to put my little tag in. Just as I sew that, I'm going to put that in just there. And I'm just going to change the stitch to a normal zigzag on this one. Okay. almost done. Again, just trimming threads. Now you might like to use these as shorts. You could even make them as pyjama pants. And there we have it, a nice pair of little boy shorts. And that's the back of it. And so he knows which is front and back. There's a little tag, just something very small. And I try to use something very soft as well, so that it's very, very soft, so that it doesn't cause any irritation. Okay, there you have it. Thanks for joining me. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope to see you back again. And if you have any suggestions, please leave them in the comments. I do read all the comments, and I do try to reply to all the comments. So thanks once again. Have a great day, and I'll see you again soon. Bye.